So what's the problem we're facing here? Why didn't we actually delete learn advanced concepts here when we started with deleting the first item before? Well, because we're using the index for deleting items. And if I add some items here, these indexes, of course, always start at 0. So the learn advanced concepts item here has an ID of goal 0. And therefore, when I click this delete button, I will also send a request, a delete request to goals/0. And for the second list item, I send one to goals/1. Now, the problem is, if I delete this first item here, that item will be deleted. But now, in my UI here, the second item still has the ID goal-1, and I'm sending a delete request to /goals/1. So I'm trying to delete the item with the index 1, therefore. But since I already deleted that other item, this item is the only item left in the array, and therefore it will actually have an index of 0 there, not 1. So the problem in the end is that we're using the index for deletion, but the index of course changes whenever we delete items, at least if we don't start at the end of the list. Therefore, the workaround here has nothing to do with HTMX, but instead is something we should do in general to make sure that we're not deleting the wrong item. And that workaround is that we should assign IDs, unique IDs, to these items when we create them. So when we push our goal text here, we should actually not push just that text, but instead maybe an object that has a text property that stores that text, but that also has an ID property which we can then later use for deleting that item. And here, to get a unique ID, or at least an ID that's unique enough for this demo, I'll construct a new date object and call getTime. And this will give me the current time in milliseconds, which for this demo app is unique enough. In theory, you could submit 2 items at exactly the same point of time, but for this demo app, this is good enough. And therefore, this will then give us a unique ID in the end. So with that, we of course now need to change the way we render these list items, because now course goals no longer includes just strings. Instead, it includes objects with a text property and an ID property. And therefore, the ID we set here should be goal dash and then this ID. Therefore, I'll actually store it in an extra constant so that I can use it here and also here, so that I can use that ID that we generated here to assign that ID to that list item. The text, of course, is still the goal text, but then the request should be sent to goals/ID, and the target also uses that ID. And we no longer need that index. And then here, when we delete an item, I'll rename this dynamic path parameter to ID and extract it here, and rename this to ID here as well. And then to delete the course goal, I will actually find the index of the item that should be deleted by accessing my course goals and by then calling findIndex. And this is a built-in method which takes a function as an argument, which will be executed for every item in course goals, and which should return true if it's the item we're looking for. And then findIndex will give me the index of that item. And I'm looking for the item where the ID is equal to the ID I got here from my request. Now, what's important to note is that this ID here will be a string because we're extracting it from the URL, whereas this ID will be a number because I'm constructing it as a number here. Therefore, I'll actually call toString here so that we have the same data type. So with that, I have the index and I can then still use splice. Of course, we also need to update this code here now, though, because now a goal is no longer just a string. Instead, it's such an object with a text property and an ID property. And therefore, I'll use the ID property here for constructing this list item ID. And I'll use the text property here for outputting the text. And then here it's again goal.id in these places down here. Therefore, I no longer need this index. Okay, if we now save that and we reload, we should therefore now be able to add these items. And if I now start with deleting the first item, and I then also delete the second item, and I then reload, they're both gone. And they are both gone now because now we're managing these items in a better way because we're now assigning and using unique IDs for these items.